Alright guys, so hope you're doing fine as always. Today I'm making a video about the exponential moving averages, or in short, or EMAs. This was requested in the comments of last video, so without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. So first of all, I think it's very important to understand the differences between the EMA and the SMA. As you will hear a lot of people say, I use EMA or I use SMAs. An SMA is a simple moving average, while an EMA is an exponential moving average. The difference is that with an SMA, averages all the closing prices over a selected period equally, while an EMA gives more weight to recent prices, which makes it a lot more reactive or react a lot faster to price changes. I also included the calculations of how an SMA and an EMA is calculated. We won't go over the math behind it, as that's not too important for us. But you can see that the calculation of an EMA is a lot more complex than it is for an SMA. I personally prefer using the EMAs over the SMAs, purely because of the fact that it reacts faster to price changes. So here are the key features of our EMAs. So like we said before, the more weight is put on recent prices. So the recent prices are more important than the older prices, which gives us a smoother and more responsive line on our chart. The EMAs, therefore, are also commonly used in trend analysis. That's also how I use the EMAs in my strategy. The EMAs that I personally use, I think most of you who will know this, are the 5, the 13, the 50, plus the 50 EMA Cloud, the 200 and the 800 EMA. So our short-term EMAs here are the 5 and 13. Our medium-term EMAs will be the 50 plus its EMA Cloud. The 50 EMA Cloud is just created by two different EMAs around the 50 EMA itself. This can either be EMAs at a certain percent above or below the 50 EMA, or it can be based on the average true range, or ATR. For long-term EMAs, we use our 200 and our 800 EMA. So most of you know I use the TR main indicator, which already has these EMA levels preset, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, what is the purpose and the best use for these different EMA levels? So for a 5 EMA, it's for ultra short-term momentum. The best use for it will be then scalping and quick trades, and it's only looking back for such a short period of time that you can best use this for very, very quick trading. Our 13 EMA is for short-term trend directions. So the best use for this is fast-moving trades and reversals. On the other end, our 50 EMA is more for medium-term trends and structures. The best use for this can then therefore be swing trading confirmations, also scalp trading confirmations to be fair, but it's a great one for swing trading. We then have our 200 EMA, which is used for long-term trends and institutional interests. We use this to spot major support levels or major resistance levels. At last, we have our 800 EMA, which is deeply institutional trends and cycle shifts. We use this to see the bigger picture of market phases. So now we can have a look at the theoretical use of these EMA levels. So for scalping, we will be using our 5 and 13 EMA levels, and more specifically then EMA cross. So if we see a cross of our 5 and 13 EMA levels, this can potentially indicate an early trend shift. Theoretically, if prices are above our 50 EMA, we could say we're in a bullish trend. If they're below the 50 EMA, we could say we're in a bearish trend. Personally, I prefer looking at my victory candles for this, so I don't use that too often, but theoretically this is how a 50 EMA can be used as well. So for scalping, I think it's quite obvious that we will be doing this on smaller time frames. So we will also be looking at our EMAs here on smaller time frames, like the 5 and 15 minute, for example. We then also have swing trading. Here our two important EMA levels are the 50 and the 200. So if our 50 EMA is above our 200 EMA, we could say we're in an uptrend. While if the 50 EMA is below our 200 EMA, we could say we're in a downtrend. So if prices pulls back to the 50 EMA, this can be an area where we can look for potential entries, depending on how strong this pullback is or how strong our trend is. So for swing trading, we'll mainly be looking at the 15-minute time frame, the 1 hour time frame, and the 4 hour time frame, I would say. So also we look at the EMA levels on these time frames. Then we have long-term trends. So here our 200 and our 800 EMA are key. So if price is nearing the 200 EMA, this is usually a critical decision point in terms of support and resistance. This means that prices will quite often react at a 200 EMA level. Of course, this depends on the time frame you're looking at. This won't be the case if you're looking on the 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, and so on. But when you're on the 1 hour, 4 hours, daily, weekly, monthly, and so on, the 200 EMA is a very, very important level. Theoretically, we could say if our 200 EMA is above the 800 EMA, we're in a bullish macro trend, and if the 200 EMA is below the 800 EMA, we're in a bearish macro trend. Then if prices crosses our 800 EMA, this usually indicates a major shift, and this doesn't happen too often. Depending on your time frame, of course, again, this is not for the low time frames, but for the bigger time frames. If you're on the bigger time frames, you will see prices very rarely cross the 800 EMA. So this can also be considered your final zone of support or resistance in brackets. So that's pretty much the theory behind our EMAs. So without further ado, let's jump to Tradingview, where we can have a quick look on the EMA levels on a Bitcoin chart, for example. Alright, so we're now here on Tradingview. I'm on the Bitcoin chart on the 4 hours at the moment. So first thing first, we see here all these lines, and of course my vector candles are on as well. So this yellow line will be our 5 EMA, while the red line is our 13 EMA, this light blue is our 50, the purple cloud is our 50 EMA cloud, the white line right here is our 200 EMA, and the dark blue line is our 800 EMA. So now what can we see if we zoom out here, for example, on the 4 hour time frame on Bitcoin? We see that prices are respecting our 200 EMA right here. It's acting quite strong, and our 50 EMA as well. We're sitting above the 800 EMA, so we can see if we zoom out all the way, prices are very, very rarely crossing this 800 EMA. So they crossed it once here, and in this area, but that's about it as far as we can look back here. The 200 EMA is acting quite strong as a bouncing zone for this bull run right here, I would say. You can see we're currently sitting below it. Theoretically speaking, if price is below or in between our 200 EMA and our 800 EMA, that's a accumulation zone, let's call it. So it's not an ideal zone to trade in, but again, that will depend on what time frame you're on. So you can always take some scalping trades or build up swing trades if you're in this zone. So what's another very commonly known thing with EMAs or you've probably heard this before, is a golden cross or a dead cross. It's when our 50 EMA is crossing above the 200 EMA. So this light blue line is crossing above this white line. People call this a golden cross. If the 50 EMA is crossing, let's see, like right here, below our white line, below the 200 EMA, people call that a dead cross. Personally, I don't use that, but just for your information. So maybe if we go to the daily, here we see even better that our 200 EMA, it's a really important zone on the bigger time frame. So we see some reaction here, we see resistance, we break through it. From there, it's acting as support. Again, acting as support. Okay, you go below it a little bit, but you can see, generally speaking, it's still quite a nice support zone on the higher time frames. Now, if we go to lower time frames, so now, for example, the 1 hour time frame, you can see prices are hugging our 50 EMA. I can show an example later on an ADA trade that I took this week, of where I used our 50 EMA as a confluence for an entry. So this is more for midterm trading. Let's just zoom out. Also here we see on the 1 hour time frame, our 800 EMA is acting up. So it really depends on what time frame you are. So the 4 hours, it will be more than 200. Well, on the 1 hour, it's already our 800 EMA. So very much dependent on time frames. So if we now go to smaller time frames, let's say our 5-minute time frames, what I usually use for scalping, in combination with a 15-minute and a 1 hour as well though. So here we see on smaller time frames that it's mainly our 5 and 13 EMAs that are moving quite strongly. Those of you that watch all of my videos will probably have seen examples where I'm talking about these EMA crosses of the 5 and the 13. You can see with every big move, they're moving quite nicely with prices, very reactive. Let's see if we find a nice example of an EMA cross. So here, for example, those of you that have seen more of my trades or know of joined in on the live streams before know that I'm a big fan of the 5 and 13 EMA crosses for scalping. So if we have a strong move up or down, doesn't matter, and we see an EMA cross, that's usually a good confluence for an entry zone. So I might enter trades when I see an EMA cross happening. I have my stop loss below the cross, or I might enter even lower. Stop loss below the cross, targeting some vector candles, doesn't matter here, it's just an example, or liquidity zone, let's say, would be a good trading, but I'm really a big fan of a 5 and 13 EMA cross. But I want to see this after a big move up or a strong move down. It speaks for itself that when you have crosses like this that are super close to our 5 EMA, our 50 EMA, sorry, this does not make a lot of sense to use that as an confluence for trading, while having a cross that's after a big move up, like here, for example, this is already a better form of confluence to short. So now let's have a look at an example trade that I took here this week on ADA. We won't go over the whole trade, but this was a 7.6 hour trade on ADA based on the EMAs. So quick background, we had a sweep. We saw Bitcoin was turning bullish again. The order book was flipping. So I looked at ADA for a potential long setup. What can we see here? We're really hugging our EMA zone. So our 50 EMA has been acting as some type of resistance this whole way. We managed to break it again, retesting it a bunch of times. So this is the 1 hour time frame. So what is this, from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.? This 50 EMA has been holding up as support. If we look at that on the smaller time frames, we will see this even more. So our EMAs are really acting as strong support. First the 50, the 5 and the 13, then our 200 is coming in as well, failing to break it. So this was for me a good type of confluence that these EMA zones were being respected, and we could see a potential move up from there. Even on the 5 minutes, near the 800 EMA is also coming into play. So also acting, so we're sitting above or at all our EMAs combined. So all of them, 5, 13, 50, 200 and 800 are all sitting together here on the small time frames. And it's acting as perfectly or as perfect support right there. So that was a confluence for me to look long or to take this long in combination with the vector candle and the current order book on Bitcoin. You could see the trade eventually hit full profit. So that's one way how you can use EMAs. Let's see if we saw other example right here, for example. Big move down. We saw a reversal, we do get the EMA cross, so potential zone to look for a long setup. So that's in a nutshell how I personally use EMAs in my trading. It's purely a form of confluence. I will never take a trade purely based on EMA levels. There's a lot of times that I also just ignore my EMA levels on smaller time frames, but definitely on bigger time frames, they can be quite nice to find some type of support or resistance. Like I said, I will never take a trade purely based on EMAs alone, but for me, EMAs is a nice add-on to have with your vector candles, just to get an idea of what's the sentiment of the market, where can be potential support and resistance zones, and so on. I hope this video was somewhat useful for you and you learned something. I know it will take time and a lot of practice to understand and to read these EMAs, but feel free to jump in the live streams or look at the trades that I take. Sometimes you will see there are some nice EMA plays playing out there. If there are any more questions about this, please don't hesitate to ask them in the comment sections or on the Discord server. I will always be more than happy to answer these questions, as I know this can be confusing at first. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, see ya, bye bye.